I think being creative, not being afraid to hear no or hear crickets. I think also it's helpful to lose quick than it is to hear nothing. So it's okay to
Hmm.
hear no. In fact, that's a better use of your time to hear a no right off the bat. So kind of trying to solicit even a response, hoping that at least it's a no so that you can move on and find somebody else who's better suited.
Peyton Jackson is an account executive at Boost My School, a fundraising and event management platform for K-12 schools. Before this, she worked in fundraising at UGA's Terry College, then moved through sales roles at Medicat and August schools. Today, we are talking about what actually moves deals forward when you're selling into schools, and why the advantage doesn't come from understanding buyers better, but from having been on the other side of the table as the person that those buyers serve. This is Are You Getting More? Peyton, thank you for joining us.
Thanks. It's great to be with you, Adrian and Lisa. It's a pleasure.
Now, you made a really deliberate move from fundraising at UGA's Terry College into EdTech SaaS sales. What did you see in that transition that other people in advancement roles might be missing about where their skills could take them?
Sales has, that tendency to like have somewhat of a tacky, connotation to it. And I don't think it's that way at all. I think in whatever role you're doing, you're selling, whether you're selling a solution or selling your service, or selling an idea. Everybody has those skills. And I used to joke in fundraising, gosh, if I can sell an idea or sell a vision, I can certainly sell something. And so I kind of felt like, well, I think I've got these skills. It's all about building relationships and building trust. And that resonated well. When I moved into a sales role, I felt like I already had that background. I was in fundraising really young. I kind of built that muscle of being told no, that muscle that a lot of people are a little scared to flex a little bit. And so in sales, it felt natural for me. And I think a lot of fundraisers have that. And so it makes sense to go into sales.
Wonderful. You've now worked at three different edtech companies as selling into schools: Medicat, August Schools, and Boost My School. What's the pattern you've noticed in what actually moves a deal forward with institutional buyers versus what founders think moves deals forward?
Yeah, I think selling into institutions is different than selling into smaller businesses with B2B sales. It's different in one sense. Uh, Budgets, they're cyclical, and schools they're deciding on when they're going to buy something might be 6 months ahead of time. And I
Mm.
think in the sales role, as you're moving somebody through an evaluation, it's easy to fall back on, oh, well, it's just not the right time for them. We'll have to catch them again in another 8 months. But I think it's more about being flexible with them. Certainly that is the case. And I felt like when I was in higher ed tech sales at Medicat, working with state institutions, budgets were certainly a constraint. But as you get into K-12, private independent schools, they have a little bit more wiggle room. And so you're able to work with them and focus more on what their initiatives are that are coming up around the corner versus, oh, well, it's just not going to be in the budget cycle this year. And I think getting more people involved and kind of putting on different shades of pink, if you will, when you look at your product and your solution to gear your solution towards different groups, because the more people that you have involved, the quicker that project's going to get done and the more of a priority it is on their table.
Coming from the fundraising side, you understand both the donor relationship and the vendor relationship with schools. How does that dual perspective change the way that you approach selling software to the same institutions?
I was able to have a very organic settle into my role now selling to fundraisers, having been a fundraiser myself. I think as salespeople, we kind of feel like all they're thinking about is what they're buying next. But the truth is that fundraisers are not buyers 99% of the time. If anything, they're sellers. So they know your game just as well as you do. They're selling a vision, they're selling a future for their institution, but they're not always thinking about buying. So keeping it top of mind that I'm not at their top of mind. I've got to find ways to get creative about, how am I going to keep this relationship going? Fundraisers naturally are just relationship people. A lot of salespeople are too. And so finding ways to not necessarily, hey, bringing this to the top of your inbox. Hey, did you look at the contract? But you finding ways to connect with them personally, connect with their vision, let them know when you're thinking about them in ways that aren't just moving the needle forward for you, but kind of folding your way back in every once in a while to keep the needle moving. And I always say give to get. You want to give people things before they feel like they're going to give you back anything. And so, inviting them to a webinar, sending them, a recent report on philanthropy has been helpful just to kind of keep you top of mind, make you feel like they trust you. They know that you know what they're talking about. And I think that moves the needle.
So less of a vendor and more of a partner?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're just not used to buying, I think. Fundraisers, maybe they think about a software purchase every once in a while. Maybe they're looking for an event hall to host a reunion, or, maybe they're sending out mailed pieces. But when it comes to software, they don't do that very often. So working together with them and like partnering with them in this evaluation, hey, I'm going to tell you if I think this is a good fit or not. And sometimes I do. And I think that is, what builds trust. And if anything, at the end of this, we've made a new friend and we can move on from this conversation if we're not a good fit.
At Medicat, you went from inside sales rep to account executive. What's the most important thing you learned in that transition that you wish someone had told you before you made the jump?
That's a great question. I think going from inside sales to outside sales, it's a whole other beast. And I think you have to think about outside sales much more strategically if you're making that jump from inside to outside. I like to use the example of, I'm a Costco member. And so if I'm, going through and you're trying to sell me Costco brand cookies, it's much of an easier buy for me to buy your Costco cookies because I'm already there and maybe you've got some samples out. But if you're trying to sell me Sam's Club cookies, you've got to hope that I've got friends who are Sam's Club members that can tell me how great you are. Maybe you have to send me a mailer, or just hope that I had a really bad experience one day at Costco and you've been in the back of my mind, having kind of been a little bit, all over the place and trying different channels. So I think being creative, not being afraid to hear no or hear crickets. I think also it's helpful to lose quick than it is to hear nothing. So it's okay to hear no. In fact, that's a better use of your time to hear a no right off the bat. So kind of trying to solicit even a response, hoping that at least it's a no so that you can move on and find somebody else who's better suited.
Interesting. That's a very unique strategy, actually. Not pushing for the yes, but pushing for something, because many people probably don't respond simply because they're afraid to say no or they don't like conflict.
Yeah. And I think I've found that, having gone through that and, there was some interest there, they clicked on a page I noticed and now they're not showing up at all. So I find that even when I get, sales emails in my inbox, I say, thanks so much for reaching out. I appreciate what you do, but I'm not interested right now. Or, hey, let's grab a meeting. Anything to kind of give them, maybe I'm hoping for good karma and I'll get the same.
Hey, it works.
It does work. Most definitely.
Karma is real.
Now, selling into K-12 schools has a reputation for being, to put it mildly, for being a grind. Long sales cycles, budget constraints, multiple stakeholders, and you addressed some of this earlier. But what's a mistake that you see other ed tech sellers making when they approach this market?
Something that I see often is that the answer is usually, we just don't have the budget for it. That is almost always the answer in K-12. And I'm certainly aware of the fact that there are budget constraints. When you're talking about public schools, again, they work through that cyclical budget cycle that's approved by the board. But when you're working with independent schools, there is a little bit of wiggle room there. And so while it's not necessarily always the budget, it's maybe that you didn't play into or sell into the end decision maker. So if I'm talking to, let's say, a fundraiser who is, really focused on making it easier to run reports or making it easier for donors to give with Apple Pay, that's not moving the needle for the head of school that wants to just see more dollars in or wants to, have this larger idea of what success looks like in that advancement office. So you may not always have a direct line to the end decision maker sometimes in ed tech, but it's very important to coach your champion to sell into their head of school or whoever the end decision maker is. And then what I would say also is that as that budget conversation comes back, or maybe now isn't the right time, be really, really diligent about following up, making sure that you're following up, sending a handwritten card. It was so great to make a friend. I hope that we can connect in the future. You've got all this marketplace. And so it's kind of hard to follow up on that, but being really diligent, set a task once a week. I'm going to go back and send, emails to those schools that I maybe parted ways with last month. It keeps you top of mind if it really is a budget problem, but otherwise keep changing those shades of glasses and making sure that you are selling your product in a different way to every person that you speak to.
That is excellent advice.
I love it.
Thanks.
I'm glad we didn't skip that question.
Yeah.
Now, Boost My School is competing in a space with established players for fundraising and event management software. When you're talking to a school that's already using something else, what's the conversation you have that actually creates urgency to switch?
Now I'm going to put my sales hat on for Boost My School. I think especially since we're selling into fundraisers, they're relationship people. They love to feel connected to their donors, but also to who they're working with on a daily basis. I think at Boost My School, the secret sauce really is our school success managers and how they partner with our schools. So we've got tons of examples of schools that really feel like their school success manager is with them throughout the year. Their calendar's on their school success manager's calendar, and they're really working as an extension of their team. And we always say, and it's true at Boost, when they win, we win. I mean, that's just our business model. And I really think that's moving the needle for our K-12 schools. It's much different than higher ed or nonprofits. Maybe you just have at-large community members or alumni. Where K-12, you're looking at parents, grandparents. It's a really niche community. We know it. We're boots on the ground. And so I think, again, they're relationship people. We are too. I was just working with a school who was just floored at how much their school success manager was helping them after having, signed on, a contract. And I was like, I told you that was going to be the case. And so I think
Still surprised.
exactly. And so it was great to hear, of course. I relayed that, that positive comment back. But again, that moves the needle. Your best marketing tool is happy customers. And you don't really get that a lot in SaaS businesses. Having that one-on-one, I can call, text, email, that's been moving the needle for us. And I'm really thrilled with how it's working.
In my career, I've been a solutions architect, sales engineer, head of developer relations. I've built and run communities. We've also built educational material and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you are right. Like I see salespeople who are like, sign the contract, peace out. And I've attached myself to everything from sales, pre-sales, post-sales, delivery, customer success, community, relationships, all around making sure that the customer, that the product is implemented right, that they're happy with it, that it satisfies their expectations, that we get them the support that they need, all of which seems so obvious to me.
Yes.
But is apparently missing.
Yes.
And I don't even do it from the standpoint of, let's reduce churn, let's make sure they renew next year. It's just the right thing to do. You have been in the ed tech sales world for long enough now to see what separates the reps who constantly hit quota from the others who struggle. What's the one capability or habit that you would say makes the difference between the two?
I have one answer, and I have two ways that I can extrapolate on that. My one answer is be loud.
Really?
Yeah. And what I mean by that is not aggressive, of course. I think, when I first started, I was very aware of what I didn't know. And I think it's a really important when you're moving into a new company or when you're moving into sales for the first time. Know what you don't know and figure out how to ask those questions. Make friends with your school success managers, make friends with the product development team, but kind of be loud and go to your help center if you have one first. You don't want to ask questions that are already answered for you. But knowing what you don't know, being curious about the product and the service, and then also to your direct manager, being loud about what you're doing, because then you can get feedback. If you're just kind of siloed down and you're hunkering down, head down, I'm just sending all these emails and making calls and nothing's sticking. If you're not kind of bouncing things off of your manager or off your colleagues even, you're not getting feedback on what's working well. And then what I would also say, especially to folks who are younger or moving into sales for the first time that maybe aren't quite as confident, I certainly felt that. Getting more confident in leading the process, you are the expert. That's why they're talking to you. They may be the expert in their field, but you're the expert in the solution that you're bringing to their field. And what I used as a framework to help me with that before I really felt confident and I was just acting like it was the Sandler method. I don't know if you've heard of the upfront contract where you say, hey, this is what I've got planned for us for this call. At the end, we'll decide if it makes sense for us to continue this evaluation or we can call it quits, but we'll either make a check-in call or I'll send you a contract, whatever. Does that sound fair? And so having that framework, look it up if you don't know it, kind of
Okay.
helps you. It's like training wheels. Like if you just
Hmm.
follow it, it'll get you in that mindset. And then it puts you in place to be loud and lead that evaluation while still, building trust in the beginning. So I'd say be loud internally, be loud externally, and build that confidence, even if you have to use training wheels to make it happen before you feel that way.
If you're advising someone who just took their first account executive role at an edtech company, what's the one thing you'd tell them to focus on in their first 90 days that most people overlook?
That's a great question. When I was moving from fundraising at the Terry College to selling an electronic health record with no medical background,
Mm.
I was in over my head. So what I would say is even if your manager doesn't off the bat offer this, ask if you can be on implementation calls with the success team. Ask if you can be on other meetings where your clients are talking to your colleagues. I think that helps you kind of understand who you're selling into. Again, going back to putting different shades of glasses on, you need to understand why your product is important to each person that you're selling to, up the chain, down the chain. And so get into that help center, watch demos, ask as many questions as you can. But then I would also say follow up. My first few sales at each role that I was in, I was on those implementation calls afterwards, oh, you can hop off if you want. Nope, I'm going to go camera off and I'm going to listen and soak it all up just to
Mhm.
really feel what it's like to be a client and what makes people tick, maybe what you might have been missing in your conversations that actually is like really high value piece of your product that you might not have known because maybe you don't have experience in that in that specialty or you're just new, you're still learning it. I would say get on all the calls you can first 90 days.
Looking back at everything you've learned, from fundraising to selling into the same institutions, what's the one principle about building relationships with schools that you think every edtech seller should understand, but most actually don't?
I think it's okay to hear no. I think at the end of the day, advancement directors and folks in development and really in the K-12 space, they have a very clear mission. They're very relationship driven, whether they're meeting with new families, who are interested in their school or they're meeting with donors. They're hearing no all the time, and it's possible that you hear no too. But I think at the end of the day, what I think some folks miss is, of course, there's a high in closing a deal. Duh, that's why I'm in sales, right? You love that high of getting that contract in. But at the end of the day, and I think what brings you further is that human capital is important in both of our markets. It was important for me when I was a fundraiser. It's important for me now. And I would say in terms of longevity, it's more important than closing a contract right now. So I wouldn't say to get too overzealous to, just run down a discount into the abyss just to try to close a deal or anything like that. Focus more on building that relationship. They care about it too, and they do it in their own job. Save that relationship versus just trying to get it in super quick. It's easy to want to catch that high, but I'd say slow down. Take it as a win if you've come out of it with somebody who trusts and respects you as the expert in your field. And when the time is right, it'll come back. Of course, there are sales strategies on how to move the deal or somebody's ghosting you. Absolutely use those, but also use your emotional intelligence and understand when maybe the time isn't right and tell them that, hey, I don't think the time's right for you. It's sounding like maybe not. You're a little busy right now. Let's touch base in the new year. A lot of times that negative pendulum's a little reverse psychology and they might come running back. But even still, you've kind of given them even more trust that you're a friend in this at the end of it. And
Mhm.
I think that saves your relationship for a future deal in the future if it's not the right time at the moment.
Well, Peyton, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh, thank you. It was so wonderful to chat with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
If any of you listening want to connect with her and learn more about what they're doing at Boost My School, we'll have a link in the description. Thank you so much for joining us for Are You Getting More? We'll see you next time.